9 p.m. 6 days a week. That's
Is
what
that what
he.
he said? I think
That
there was
people
some
are
backlash on
criticizing him.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
people are criticizing him that
that he's a slave
slave
driver.
driver.
Yeah.
Exactly. But he don't care.
Oh gosh, that's funny.
So when you love what you do, you have to do it. Sounds like some people I know.
No.
Oh, okay.
10 days until Avengers Endgame. 10. For 10 more days. Just 10 more days. 10. That the money
3 more days
as the show ends.
if I go leave.
How many leaves are you gonna
Had to
take,
rub it
man?
in.
How long is this one now?
1 week, just 1 week.
Oh, okay.
With critical focus on the Nigerian economy,
All right.
we see the bigger picture.
Mike's up.
Business
Student
Express
silence,
on
please.
Smooth
Student live.
98.
And we're live. Lagos, good morning. 0809-444-0981 for your messages on Twitter. Use that hashtag BusinessExpress981.
All right, so a little bit of explaining to do because obviously folks are expecting either the money buff Bumi or the Horseman. So we have a new sponsor, and it's your fault, our listeners, because more of you keep listening to this show, more of you keep sending messages.
You
more
say
of you,
like it's a bad thing.
No, it's a good thing. So I
Yes,
just want
it
to
is.
let them know that we are attracting sponsors to the show, and it's fantastic. So Hazel is from Sigma Pensions, and Hazel, you're a consumer goods analyst, yes?
Yes.
Perfect. So actually, it's excellent timing that you're here with us today because the market was down, or while the market was down by I think it was 0.22%, the consumer goods sector was actually up by 1.3% yesterday. What was behind that? Any particular catalyst as to why the consumer goods sector was the positive territory yesterday?
I think it was just largely driven by the gain in Nigerian brews. So Nigerian brews was up by 6% yesterday, and it's largely due to demand from offshore investors.
Okay.
So I think that's basically what was it for
the consumer
yeah,
goods.
exactly.
Okay, so if we take a macro view of the consumer goods sector, do you have any picks, or what's your take on the stocks that are there right now, the companies that are there?
I think I largely have a hold on most consumer names right now. I think that's also because to start with the brewers, yeah. So following the aggressive entry by AB InBev last year, we've basically seen increased industry rivalry amongst the brewers, and that has then off the back of that we've seen volumes come up for the major market leaders, and also they also now have like limited ability to adjust their pricing. So last year the government also introduced excise duties on alcoholic drinks, and unfortunately for them they've been unable to fully pass through those price increased costs to their consumers. Exactly. So, and that's because, like I said, that's basically because of the increased rivalry. So I think Nigerian breweries had shortly after that excise duty was introduced increased their pricing, and then Guinness also did the same, but then they noticed that AB InBev left theirs flat, left theirs unchanged, so everybody backtracked and
moved back.
Exactly.
Okay, so breweries not much.
So nothing much happening there. Then for the commodity plays, for Dang Sugar, they've been fraught with lower commodity prices so far. So just last year, globally, raw sugar prices were down by about 22%. But
and
then
that's part of what their inputs requires.
Yes,
raw sugar.
yeah. So,
Okay.
but then they only adjusted their prices lower by about 15%, and they also struggled. So their volumes were a bit dampened. But I believe that was due to the fact that there was then the influx of cheaper
Smuggled, you can say
cheaper sugar smuggled in from
Right.
neighboring countries. So that's also weighed on their volumes, and so for
Dangote,
yes, that's for Dangote sugar.
Yeah.
For Nascon, for instance,
that's the salt side. Yeah.
that's the salt side.
Right.
They've also seen, so they're already at the market leader in the edible salt space. They're trying to move into the refined salt space as well. But then the management has pointed to the fact that that's led to a price war in that space. So So there's that happening there, and then even in the edible source, where there's new entrants in that space, and
So
that's
more competition.
For
Yeah.
them. So I don't really see much happening for the consumer in the consumer goods space. So it's basically a story of increased competition across board, and also some cost pressures for a number of them, and I don't see any strong catalyst to drive growth for any
In
of
the
them
sector.
in the sector.
So it's a hold for
so
you.
it's a hold right now.
Okay, excellent stuff. All right, and again, as far as stocks are concerned, please, consult your broker, before actually making any particular decisions as to what stocks you buy. All right, we move from the consumer goods sector over to education. Now, on this show, I'm sure our listeners remember when we spoke with, I wish I spoke to Dangote.
Well, I spoke to Dangote. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's star now. Well, on the show here, we talked about Mo Ibrahim, the
Yes.
telecoms billionaire who had his 2019 governance weekend in Abidjan in Cote
That's
d'Ivoire.
right. Mhm.
Everybody remembers when Dangote went there, said the first time he knew he had money was when he withdrew $10 billion, blah, blah,
Kept it
blah.
in his house
And kept his
for a few
house,
hours and went back
took
to the
it there.
bank.
So just to remind people of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, because this discussion on education is some stats that were released by the Mo Ibrahim Foundation. Although I should point out it's from 2016. So there's a chart here. Hazel, help us out. It's the top African destinations for African international students. So they're looking at the top 10 countries in Africa for international African students across the continent.
Yeah.
So hey Hazel, what's the top 10 there?
So that's South Africa, Ghana, Morocco, Senegal, Benin, Tunisia, Cote d'Ivoire, Namibia, Egypt, and DRC.
Right, the Democratic Republic of
Yeah.
Congo. Now on Twitter, when they released this out, because there's a Twitter account, I think it's called African Visuals. You guys should follow that account. They visualize all types of data, use colorful charts and stuff like that. Most of the responses from people were, "Where is Nigeria?" Because we're not in the top 10, right? To which I have to read this tweet out from a random person. Said, "LOL. Who would willingly leave their country and come to Nigeria for a university education?" Which is very harsh, very harsh. But Hazel, what are your thoughts as far as this chart and where Nigeria places? And actually, do you personally know anybody overseas who has sent their child to a Nigerian?
Yes.
Oh, you do, Valentine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
From which country?
We're from everywhere.
Valentine is Mr.
No. I'm not talking about
Devil's advocate.
Hang on, I'm
Yeah.
not talking about the federal universities.
Okay, private.
We have a lot of private universities that are world class, world standard. Even
class?
business school. Yes, of course. We have business schools. We have the best business school. Look at me, yes, I'll say it. Eyeball to eyeball. We have the best business school
okay.
in Africa.
Which is nice.
Here
Well,
in Lagos.
This one, on this show, we deal with numbers. This chart, the chart does not reflect what
Okay, I
you're
rest
saying.
my case.
All right, but Hazel, what are your thoughts?
So basically, I think if you look at the Nigerian government's budgetary allocation to education over the past decade, you see that it's averaged around 7%, which is starkly lower than the 26% minimum recommended by UNESCO, and lower than the 30%, about 30% that Ghana is doing.
Ghana always comes up. It's just well,
I
every
mean,
time.
they're
Yeah,
neighbors
right.
and they're doing better.
Right,
so it's
right.
unfortunately.
Mm.
Anyways, so I mean that underfunding gap, I think, is what has accounted for the frequent strike actions by lecturers, the deteriorated infrastructure in most universities. Labs are ill-equipped. Just the learning facilities are all run down and everything.
Right.
The curriculum is also outdated. So I won't entirely blame anybody for not wanting to send their children to come here to school.
Well, again, once more, the top 10: South Africa, Ghana, Morocco, Senegal, Benin, Tunisia, Cote d'Ivoire, Namibia, Egypt, and the DRC. Those are the top 10 according to the Mo Ibrahim Foundation.
Where's Nigeria?
We're still we're still working it out.
We're here. So let's take this message from Yinka. Yinka says, "Okay, this is for you, Hazel. This babe's voice is just been in my head. Hope she'll come again."
Oh, Yinka, you man.
It says, "Rotus, Val, you guys need to start considering live listeners in the studio too."
Yinka, you're
And
just
then he
a
goes on
mess.
to say, "I heard somebody withdrew $10 billion, kept it at home, and he could sleep. I remember my first job after NYC. I was going to use the ATM, so I rode with our accountant to the bank. He withdrew 7 million naira and
Wow.
kept it beside me at the back. Bros, I had to come down and fly back. He said, I don't want trouble.
No, but you see, Yinka makes a good point to that. So who isn't scared taking out a large sum of money, eh? And that's thanks to the cashless policy from the CBN to at least help us out with
And
that.
then Rainmaker says, Rotus, where can we see in actual terms what the NSIA is doing with our funds? Kudos to our new analyst. She's smart and her voice is awesome. We look forward to more better outings from you, ma'am. Welcome to the Business Express family.
All right, very
Oh,
kind,
so
very
warm,
kind
so
of our
nice.
listeners.
Super
Yinka
lovely.
and Rainmaker. But the NSIA, they haven't been publishing their figures. We're still waiting for them to actually do that, but they need to be. I mean, like every other company that shows financial performance, we need to see how that fund is doing.
All right, so Benga Komo says, what's the meaning of the word technocrats? Because Nigerians seem to clamor for them to be in charge of the economy and every other thing. He goes on to say, we know Nigeria is not among all those countries, but the largest number of international students are Nigerians,
Right.
Which is ironic. When we went to university, we had people from all over Africa and beyond, but here we are.
Benga, true that.
And then Shaun says, thing is, parents might send their children to Nigerian universities from other countries, from other African countries, as punishment. They put that in cats. I say, shaking my head, we should continue dragging best jollof we gather. And MI from Akoka says, that's why competition is great, not collusion. Hard to determine prices for elastic products. We would school in Nigeria. Who would school in Nigeria from abroad when strike is part of the curriculum?
Sad stuff.
And then Henry Manuel says the people who will send their kids to Nigeria for tertiary education are doing that for all other reasons except education. He's asking me to fear God. It's fine. We'll be all right. Christian here says
everybody is in
they're
love
loving
with
your
Hazel's
Hazel.
voice.
Wow.
She'll come and take our jobs here. we have to be careful.
Patike says African visuals are definitely blind. Balderdash, DRC2. Seriously now, spell that lady's name.
Hazel,
really?
Hazel, Hazel.
H-A-Z-L.
Okay, shall we move on? Shall we? Okay, real quick. Now,
Yes.
our next story. Again, Hazel is a consumer goods analyst, but we had a question. Remember last week when Ugodre and Aruoture were here on Thursday, somebody was asking why hasn't FBNH released their results? They actually released it the next day on Friday, but we had Tech Friday and so on and a number of other things. Hazel, real quick, what are your thoughts on First Bank's? And I won't ask you whether it's a buy, sell, hold, because again, you're consumer goods, not financial sector. But still, what are your thoughts on FBNH's results, 2018 financial performance?
Okay, so the gross earnings for them were down by about 2%, largely driven by the fact that their interest income line was down 14% on loan book contraction, as well as a decline in their income from investment securities.
Okay.
However, there was some I mean, basically that more than offsets the 15% growth in non-interest revenue that they had recorded. I think what was very interesting to most people was the fact that there was a 42% decline in provisions.
Okay.
To about 80 billion. Despite the fact that they fully provided for their Atlantic Energy loan that everybody had waiting for. So I think first and foremost, I think management did what everybody had been waiting for what investors had been waiting for quite a bit, and fully provided for this Atlantic Energy loan.
Okay.
But nonetheless, there was a 41% decline in their provisions, and I think PBC was up 20%.
Right.
And
It's a loan story.
It's a loan story, exactly.
Yeah.
Part of why that was up was because they took some of those provisions via equity. So with the new IFRS 9 accounting standard, they're allowed to take some of their provision in via equity and not take all of it on their interest on their income statement.
So that's
what helped with the growth in PBC. So because the operating income line was down 7%, but then when it came to provisions, that came down 42%, and that was what drove the bottom line performance. Nonetheless, what was also interesting is the fact that NPL ratio was up to
25
about
20
about 300 basis points,
right,
to 26% from 23% or 23% in 2017. I think that's due to the fact that as much as they fully provided for that Atlantic Energy loan, it's not written off.
Okay.
And the reason why they wouldn't write it off, although they are fully provided for it, is the fact that the remediation process is still ongoing. And if you write it off, it might make the remediation process a bit more difficult. So I think with that they've probably fully provided for it, but it's still an NPL on their books, and then with the loan book contraction, I believe that might have also reduced the gross loans on their books. So that's probably what's accounted for the increase in NPL ratio. But then they're going to have a conference call next week Friday, and then management will give more clarity as to what actually drove that.
Can I be in that room when they make that decision?
Yeah, I know. We should be there to actually find out some more information. Thank you for that and for that analysis on FNA.
And
Is that all the time we have?
Yes, that's all the time. And final message for Dapo WhatsApp says Federal
FBNH.
First Bank Holdings results wasn't overly impressive. At least the provisions have reduced, so hopefully this year's results will be better.
All right. Hazel from Sigma Pensions. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Do
you
you want to
for
stay
having
back
me.
for smooth breakfast? Mary?
Thank you for all your warm messages, you guys out there, especially Naughty Yinka.
Very nice.
Yeah, very warm.
Nice
I love
family.
my business success family. Greatest listeners in all of Smooth FM.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
enough.
It's
Let me
Smooth
go.
Breakfast Family.
Okay, that's true. That's true.
Funny enough in life now. Lagos, enjoy music. 7:30 will bring you the flagship show. It's called Freshly Pressed 981. We'll bring you detailed analysis of the newspaper stories this morning.
Did we go over time?